Oh, here we go. 7:03. Sorry. Um, cool. So we went. Okay. Everybody waking up or um, coming on? I'm waking up. Yeah. Anyway, so good morning to Asia. Good morning to all my friends in Asia, and also to Australia, New Zealand, and good evening to everybody in the U.S. and Europe, and I guess Africa, most of Africa, right? Okay, good morning, good evening, good day, good now. Here it is, and right now again. You know, I actually got a lot of what? Some updates. Go away, go away, go away. We're not gonna let that happen. We got this. Don't worry, I got this. I got this. Okay. All right, cool. So, all right. So good, good day, everyone. Let's get started with questions and answers. Sunday Night Live. Um, Sunday Night Live answers and questions about mostly about cancer, but we also talk about other things. Since cancer is, as we all know, just one of the final metabolic pathways that biology takes. Now, remember, I want to erase some words. I want to real quickly at the beginning of this to erase some words, erase some ideas, erase some change paradigms, all that sort of thing. Um, uh, we're not going to look at cancer because cancer is not a thing that is it's not a thing, and so we changed the name to chronically fermenting cells, um, and it's CFCs. Okay, so we're going to call them CFCs because the word cancer has too much Rockefeller money behind it. Well, a lot of Rockefeller money in terms of PR, and PR is public relations. Now, public relations, as you all know, most of you who have been studying life on this planet know that public relations used to be called, back in the early part of the 20th century, used to be called propaganda. Then they changed it. Some of the major players in propaganda in President Woodrow Wilson's um, group that helped him sell World War I to the American people. Part of those guys, House. His name was Frederick House, I think, and there were some other guys who were very much involved with the Rockefellers and all of them. But anyway, they changed the name from propaganda to public relations, and public relations is how people are going to view things. So now, one of the things that they know about that, and you should all keep in mind, it's very, very important, is that hey, everybody, we've gotten everybody else. Hey, everybody, hello, good. What? I'm frozen. I froze on Facebook. Still frozen? Still frozen? No. Can you guys tell me on Facebook if I'm still frozen? Frozen? Okay. All right. Cool. 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 Anyway, one of the words that they one of the concepts that's used in PR and propaganda is definitely um, it's a concept called linguistic manipulation. And linguistic manipulation means that if you understand that words, your vocabulary, your use of language is the scaffolding of your mind. It's kind of the way in which you view the world is your language, right? And you can tell people apart from different professions because they speak different. They have different vocabularies, right? So legal people that have been trained in law have a legal vocabulary. People trained in medicine have a medical vocabulary. People trained in IT have an IT vocabulary. Plumbing, you have a plumbing vocabulary. So all of these uh, uh, unique vocabulary. So anyway, vocabulary is very important. So plumbers think like plumbers. IT people think like IT. Doctors think like doctors, and they can't help it because of the words. Words are very important. Hitler knew that. The people today know that. The people that are running the world, that are taking over the world, know that. They know that very well. All right. So now, the word cancer has developed and become when you hear the word, it kind of paralyzes you emotionally and psychologically, completely paralyzes you, because it's as if they've stole your tomorrow, because all the PR behind it is nasty. It's all nasty, and I want you to know that it doesn't at all. It's not at all nasty. What's nasty is the word is the way they is what they do, and I see it every day. I talk to people from all over the world every day, and I can't, because it's spread. The Rockefeller system has spread to everywhere. And now Singapore wants to be just like the American AMA, and so does Thailand, and so does all of them. They all want to be like that. They all want to follow in those footsteps, right? They all want to do it. Look, I got guys here wearing white coats. Come on, this is Thailand. What are you wearing a white coat for? For what? To show that you're a doctor? Because when you talk, they won't figure it out? Huh? Is that why you got to wear a white coat? What are you going to wear a white coat for? Tell me. Give me one good reason to wear a white coat. One. Well, they usually say, well, it's to distinguish so that the patients know they'll know when they talk to you. That's nonsense. It's part of the uniform. It's part of the rituals. It's part of sorcery. It's sorcery, you guys. You guys, if you think I'm crazy, okay. And if you don't want to hear my craziness, then don't. But I'm not crazy. This is sorcery. And figure out what sorcery is. Study it. Okay? Linguistic manipulation. Okay. So anyway, these are chronically fermenting cells. And all we got to do is put them in a condition where they don't have to ferment anymore. Right? Because fermentation is a what? Remember why would our cells go from being very efficient at oxidative phosphorylation, which is normal kind of breathing and as you call cellular respiration, normal for making energy? Why would they go from that to a very inefficient way called fermentation? Only if they had to, right? If they had to adapt. So that's what they're having to do. They're having to adapt. So their adaptation to the fact that they lost the use of most or a good percentage of the mitochondria they have. And by the way, these chronically fermenting cells still rely heavily on mitochondria, but they generate most of their ATP, like 90% of their ATP, through glycolysis, through fermentation. Okay, ATP is energy. Remember that. Everybody knows these things. I'm using these words because I know that you've been reading. I know that you study. I know that you guys are smart. I know that, especially if you've got any of these situations going on with you. That's all they are, situations going on with you. Okay. All right. So aloha from Hawaii. Fantastic. I sent a reply from my condition to my condition. Did you get it? No, I haven't checked this morning. I'm not sure. So anyway, I'll check on that. Dajon. Anyway, yeah, Hawaii's a fantastic place. I used to live there 15 years. I loved it. Fantastic. Wonderful, beautiful, incredible place. Love it. There's so many wonderful places in the world. Anyway, so I just wanted to remind us all that we're gonna. I like to refer to them as chronically fermenting cells, okay? Because that's what they are. They're chronically fermenting cells. It doesn't mean they have to stay that way. They don't have to stay that way. We can kind of change the way they. Okay, it's better, yeah. We can kind of change it so that they no longer have to ferment. We want to restore their ability to use oxidative phosphorylation, which is to restore their mitochondrial function. And for those of you who don't have just checking in on this stuff, mitochondria are these little teeny organelles inside of cells that produce energy. They take 6 oxygens, 1 glucose, and they make all these ATPs, really highly efficient ATPs. Okay, 36 they make, and 2 are made in this. Anyway, the net effect is 38, but they make 36 inside the mitochondria. When they're fresh in the morning, if you had a good night's sleep. If you didn't have a good night's sleep, you're not going to be making 36 in that mitochondria. You'll be making the 2, but you won't be making the 36. And how did you get a good night's sleep? Because you went to sleep when? When humans are supposed to go to sleep. When are humans supposed to go to sleep? After midnight, you say? Nah. 10 p.m.? No. Early, like 9 p.m.? No. How about 7 p.m., 8 p.m.? Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. I know. Okay, and I know, especially TikTok people are going to hate me. They hate me. I don't know why they hate me. They hate me. They watch and then they hate. Anyway, listen. I can't help it that that's the way biology and physiology is, and I can't help it. But we evolved, humans evolved. We're talking about, I'm not talking about evolution versus creation at all. I'm not talking about that. But I'm saying our physiology came out of, and it exists, and it is at home. Its niche, what we call in biology, we call it biological niche, is the tropics and subtropics. And in the tropics and subtropics, there are approximately 12-hour days and 12-hour nights. Okay, so in our natural environment, before we had machines, before we had electricity and all that sort of thing, we would be in bed by 7 p.m., 8 p.m., right? Right, but shortly after the sun went down. That's what we would do. Right? Now, do I speak Hawaiian? No. No, that's really a cool language. I don't. I used to speak Pidgin pretty well. I used to speak Pidgin English pretty well, which is what a lot of them speak. Nah. It was a cool language. I mean, it's easy. The only preposition is for, and never doesn't mean never. It means didn't. So I never know where for go. So anyway, it was great language. Anyway, it means I didn't know where to go. Did you go to the store? I never know where for go. Anyway, yeah. So Maui, aloha from Maui, China. I love I love Maui. Yeah. And I love the big island and Kauai. Even Oahu, if you get rid of Honolulu, but yeah. Honolulu used to be cool, but now. Anyway, off the subject. So anyway, so we got that whole thing. So let's talk about some questions now. I'm going to try to get as many as I can because I know I don't get very many. So thoughts on people that have healed their cancer on fruits only? Well, my thoughts on that are that the only thing I would change, what I might change in that sentence is taking the verb healed to make it instead of a transitive verb. Let's make it the intransitive. Let's say that the healing happened while eating only fruit. Healing happened while whatever people are doing. There are people. So I'm just changing it because healing is not something we do. It's just like we don't digest. Digestion happens. We don't beat our hearts. Our heart happens. We don't secrete our glands. Our glands secrete. Okay, so things happen. Life happens. It's not a doing. And by the way, for those people who are not sure, have never heard about this, the truth is we don't even think. Thinking happens. It's not a doing. It's a happening, by the way. It's a happening, by the way. It's not something you do. You didn't decide to think. You don't decide to think. And if you think thinking is under your control, then I got a challenge for you. Stop thinking for 1 minute. If it's under your control, you can stop it, right? Can't. You can, but it takes a lot. All right. So anyway, so fruit, listen, fruit fruit is, according to our physiology, according to our anatomy and physiology, in almost every respect, we are as close as you can get to being fruitarians. Frugivores, fruitarians. That's pretty much what we are. But we're not quite, because we've got some anatomical features, such as our small intestine is actually longer than our large intestines, which is not true of all the other primates, but especially the great apes, of which we share a lot of the genetic similarities, like 99%, 98%, like kind of a lot, yeah. So anyway, but they have a little bit longer. We have a little bit longer small intestines, which puts us closer to the herbivores in that respect. But in many, so people could, yes, they could heal. They could Healing could come about by eating when eating only fruit, because remember, cancer is not just driven by, and it's not just based on food. Food is exceptionally, exceedingly important and relevant to every aspect of healing, and it even affects your mind, right? Because what you eat affects how you feel and think. Watch yourself sometimes. Don't eat for a while, and then watch when you eat something. Watch. I mean, observe very carefully now when you eat and you swallow it. What happens? Your mind will change. It's a mind altering substance. Food is mind altering. Yeah. Um, and I'm not just talking about psilocybin mushrooms. I'm talking about a banana. I'm talking about, of course, and then whatever you eat. And if you're eating mashed potatoes and meatloaf and steak and things like that, it's going to alter it in one way, whereas versus another way. So anyway, um, but it's not only fruit, right? It's already what we've discussed many times, and everyone understands, is that our minds are the immune system is the shadow of the mind. So the immune system follows the mind. And if you're like happy, if you're completely optimistic, and you know you're fine, um, um, your immune system is powerful. If you just got some really good news, if you just got some really amazing news, and I checked your gamma interferon, I checked your natural killer cell uh, function number, checked your T cells and all that. So I got a lot to talk about. I don't want to get stuck on it, but I'm just saying the mind's very important. But the fruit, the only thing I have about fruit, and this is the fruit. I know what you're asking. I know what you're asking. Everybody asked me that, and I'm still gonna tell you that I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer. Why? Because I know this. Let me just repeat this, okay? All right. Now, cancer cells upregulate. In other words, they get increase the number of what they call GLUT1, GLUT2, all the GLUT, which are medical names for receptors. So the GLUT1 and 2 receptors pretty much pick up glucose, right? Because they need more glucose. Remember, they're fermenting, so they need 19 times more glucose. But they also upregulate the GLUT5, and the GLUT5 receptor picks up fructose. And cancer can feed on, it does eat fructose. It is a fuel. Can't say that it's not, it just is. So the question is, how significant is it? And that's the question. And that, again, is another hard thing, because as we've discussed, glucose will, when your levels of glucose go in your blood increase, it's going to stimulate your pancreas to make more insulin. And then cancer cells have more insulin receptors, so they're going to take it in. They're going to eat first. Fructose does not stimulate the pancreas to produce insulin, so that you don't get that. So in other words, the fructose is going to feed all cells equally, which is great, because if the cancer cells are eating as much as the healthy cells, for them it's relative starvation, because they need 19 times more. Yeah, so so can people heal? And fruit's full of all kinds of minerals and stuff like that. Fruit doesn't have, unless you're eating the seeds, which you should, doesn't have fats, and you got to have fats. So eating fruit alone, I just don't know how someone could survive without getting fats. You got to have fats. It's a macronutrient. I mean, 50% of every membrane in your body, of our 100 trillion cells, 60 to 100 trillion cells, is made of fats. All right. Our brains and our peripheral nervous systems are mostly fat. We're all fatheads. Yeah. So I don't understand if you just ate fruit. And I had a really good uh, person who eventually worked for me, but when I first met her, she had been eating only fruit. Uh, and she had these scabs all over her legs, and wanted to know why. And so that's immediately said, we got to add some fat. So this was back in 2000, 2001, 2002. Anyway, she changed her. She started adding seeds and nuts and stuff like that, and the scabs went away. So anyway, so I mean, I just don't know fruit only. Unless you're eating the seeds. If you're eating the seeds, good. Maybe then maybe yeah. Okay, so mom's liver numbers shot up when she had COC, repurposed drugs. What do we do now? Okay, so you all know the cancer, the COC. What's it stand for? Cancer Oncology, COG's Cancer Oncology Group or Care, whatever it is. Okay, so they have like four repurposed drugs. You know, they use a statin, they use mebendazole, they use ivermectin, and they use metformin. Right? These are, and we know why, because those are very important pathways, and I agree 100% with those, except for the statins. But but yeah, so her liver numbers shot up. So now the thing is this: uh, uh, those aren't really tremendously. Those, if you're just taking those four drugs, that's not. I mean, mebendazole maybe, but you're not taking large doses, so I don't think that's going to cause it. Uh, doxycycline is one of them too, right? It's one of their drugs. Yeah, they're amazing. These are drugs that are amazing. And normally, you see, so when we talk about integrative oncology, we're talking about oncology that is integrate. We're going to use every healing discipline, every medical discipline that exists. Okay, that means allopaths. You know, the medical doctors, the guys that with the white coats and the yeah, those guys. The naturopaths, the osteopaths, the traditional Chinese, the Ayurvedic, the traditional Native American, traditional Native American. So integrative, and all the indigenous cultures. I mean, the Aborigines of Australia, the Maori of New Zealand. You know, all of them. Okay, they're all fantastic. Um, but So what you do is in an integrative approach, what you do is you use the best of all when necessary, right? So I usually I very rarely going to recommend surgery, but at times you have. There's no question. There is no question. Radiation, sometimes no question. You got to do radiation. Okay. Um, Sometimes you got to do chemo. Sometimes you got to do whatever you do. But mostly we're going to try not to. Mostly we're going to do everything else. What we're going to do is we're going to work on not killing the cancer, but restoring health. Okay. So in this situation where she got the repurposed drugs, what do you do now? Well, the question is, how high did they go? One thing about the liver, because remember this, when we're going to kill parasites, which is a very important part of, I think, healing from cancer, a very important part, you're going to kill parasites. You're going to have liver enzyme elevation. You're going to have a liver enzyme elevation. So you can measure your liver enzymes and worry and chew your fingernails and all that sort of thing, or you can just not measure it and know that they're going to go up, and you do it for like 3 weeks on, 1 week off, or 4 weeks on and 1 week off, 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and you just do it that way. It's just realize that the liver enzymes are going to go up and then they're going to come down. Remember, our liver is kind of like our lizard's tail. You can donate. You've heard of people donating like 2/3 of their liver, half of their liver to their sibling or someone else who needed a liver transplant. Well, what happens is that person's liver grows back. They restore. They get their whole liver back. So, I mean, the liver is an amazing organ. But yeah, so there are other ways. So if you're doing that, you should also be eating lots of cruciferous vegetables, okay, to upregulate phase 2 detoxification of your liver, because your liver is going to be in trouble. So you want to upregulate phase 2. What happens to our liver? Okay, we have phase 1 and phase 2. A lot of times, phase 1 works on what we're eating, what's coming into the liver, and it produces what's called an intermediate. And then that intermediate is acted upon in the phase 2, and the phase 2 gets it out of the body. Well, it turns out that phase 2 in human beings, and especially our diets, is much lower than our phase 1. And so we wind up with a lot of intermediates that get stuck in there. And a lot of those intermediates can be toxic, are toxic, extremely toxic, such as dioxin. It's the intermediate that kills people, that makes it so poisonous, not the fundamental primary molecule. Yeah. So what I would say is this person should be, and also coffee enemas. If you do them right, you got to do them right. Got to do them right. Got to clean your colon, clean your rectum, clean out first the rectal vault, the descending colon with saltwater enemas, and then you do your retention enema of coffee. You use blonde coffee. S.A. Wilson is the best that I've found. I mean, if you have someone who's growing coffee, organic coffee, and you roast it for 45 seconds, it'll still look what they call blonde coffee, green coffee. Anyway, that's what you do. That will stimulate glutathione transferase, which is part of that whole system we were talking about. So that's right. And also, if you're having these kinds of issues with elevated liver enzymes, is lots of water and not eating as much too. There's lots of things. So I'm not sure what's going on, but I wouldn't. How high are they going and all that sort of thing. So that's the way. I'd be really great if you could contact me. We could talk specifically about your situation. Okay. Next one is this is all Instagram. This for our first part is doing is Instagram. So recap on vitamin supplements. All right. So vitamin supplements. If you're eating, remember the word supplement. It means that it's an addition to something that's inadequate, right? If you're supplementing something, you're adding to that which is inadequate. Okay. So if you have an inadequate diet, so if you're eating a terrible, terrible diet, then you've got to go to Whole Foods or Sprouts or one of the other big places and get one of each. You'll need them all. All right. But if you're eating healthy, if you're eating really healthy, then you won't need them all. You won't need them all. There's a few that you will need. So A, D, and C. Why C? Because C is no matter, even if you are, unless you're a fruitarian, right? If you were a fruitarian completely, that's the one thing you'd probably have for sure. It's enough. Ascorbates, vitamin C, ascorbates, essential to life. Bacteria, funguses, plants, all animals except for a few of us make ascorbates regularly. It's part of the requirements for being alive. It's part of fundamentally what we call redox biochemistry. And redox biochemistry, as you all recall, we've talked about before, but redox, which is reduction, oxidation. Reduction is another word for antioxidant. Oxidation is something that produces free radicals, right? So you oxidize something, you take away one of its electrons, it becomes crazy and it's a free radical, and it rips up stuff. And the antioxidant or the reducing agent comes along and adds an electron back. It all has to do with electrons, right? So, so anyway, so it's a fundamental part of life. So, so dogs, cats, elephants, horses, rhinos, they're all making it. They make it all day long. And they make more when they're stressed and less when they're not. And that's just the way it is. We don't make it because we're lacking the enzyme L-guanylactone. And so we don't make it. Neither do gorillas and all that stuff. But we can only absorb a little bit, so we need to be taking in small doses throughout the day. So that's why we have here 8 grams, 10 grams, 12 grams, depending on your body size, of pure sodium ascorbate. You put it in water, shake it up, and take a sip throughout the day. Okay, yeah. Now, and then A and D are essential. You almost can't get too much A. Can't get your numbers above upper limits of normal. It's really hard to do. But A and D are essential for immunity, for the immunosurveillance function of the immune system. It's very, very important. Not important. Required. Essential. High D, high A. Okay? Your vitamin D should be 90, 100, 110. Oh my God, mine was 200. Okay. All right. Skip one day, maybe. Don't worry about it. It's not gonna. It's not gonna. Listen. Most of what we've learned. How about all of what we've learned? I don't know, is the opposite of the truth. So just as a rough rule of thumb. Um, oh, what? Can you believe it? My God. I just did this thing and like everything went away. So anyway, and then iodine. Gotta have iodine. Gotta have iodine. Okay, in the iodine and iodide, we've talked about this endlessly. Both are important for many things. Energy metabolism, energy. Thyroid, gotta have it. Energy, number one. Number two, it is antimicrobial. It is an antioxidant. Yeah, it's a negative, I negative, right? So it actually donates electrons, right? So it's kind of like a vitamin C type of thing. In the molecular form, the iodine or iodine, it is a cofactor that's necessary in the metabolism of estrogens, from estrone to becoming estriol, which is the anti-carcinogen, right? And so you got to be getting enough iodine. So fibrocystic breasts and all that sort of thing, and breast cancers and things like that. Really important to be doing this. But remember, we talked about this last weekend, I think the week before too. We all talked about this, that we have estrogen receptors and both alpha and beta on many organs: lung, colon, prostate, big bladder, pancreas. Okay, they're a lot. Because remember, and this is a very important thing to keep in mind, none of the hormones, no hormone has just one function. It's just one thing. Nothing in biology does one thing except for enzymes, right? Which they are, they do one specific chemical reaction, like a decarboxylase or whatever it is. There's all kinds of enzymes. But it may be a decarboxylase in many different situations, but that's all it does. It does one thing, right? But when it comes to hormones, that's not true. Okay, so hormones they do many things. So estrogen, even though we think of it as the female hormone responsible for femininity, responsible for reproduction and stuff like that, it's also necessary for our coronary arteries in men. So, I mean, they do many things. And testosterone, which we think of as libido, basically, I think we think of them as libido. Very important for heart, brain, muscle. Yeah. So, CAD, iodine, and then I would make sure you get all your minerals. And then you get some sort of liquid mineral that gives you all of them, and then you want to add extra zinc, molybdenum, manganese, magnesium, and boron. Yeah. Am I forgetting one? You don't really have to worry about the potassium too much. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, recap on vitamins. Okay, and I'm probably missing something. Oh, selenium in there too. Yes, selenium is very important. Okay. Okay. Thoughts on all raw versus the blue zones. They eat whole grains and cooked veggies and live to 100. Okay. So again, I know my thoughts on that are this: that sadly, when if you go to Okinawa now, it's not like it was. If you go to Abkhazia in Georgia, which used to be part of Soviet Russia, I mean, these guys were living 130, 140. Now, a lot of what they ate was now they were up in the mountains and they didn't eat all cooked, but I mean all raw, but they didn't eat a lot of cooked. And same with the Hunzas. It's sad what's happened, but all the blue zones have changed. They became famous. They became thing. In Okinawa now they've got fast food. It's just changing unless you find the elders. Even you go to Vilcabamba. Vilcabamba was one of those, right, in Ecuador. I was there way back. I went way back. I've been looking at this stuff for a long time. I've been chasing the fountain of youth, chasing health for a long time. Anyway, way back when, yeah, but it's no longer that way, Vilcabamba. So all the blue zones, sadly, are not even blue zones anymore. I mean, they're not even. They still. I mean, Japan still has, still living 10 years longer than us, but it won't for very long because most of the younger generations are now eating uh, the foods that the Western food that's being spread around. When I say Western food, I mean what I really mean is mostly is American. I mean, I got to point the finger at America. I got to point the finger at America. I mean, McDonald's came out of America. Burger King came out of America. KFC came out of America. Pizza Hut came out of America. Okay, I know jazz did too, and it's fantastic. And I know rock and roll was big time. But look, what can you say about the Beatles? Oh, okay. Okay, maybe except for I was going to say, except for of course the British invasion with the Beatles and Stones and yeah, all those guys. So yeah. So it's not just so America had rock and roll, but I mean all the fast food junk, all that stuff originated in America, and somehow it became really popular and got exported worldwide. And everywhere I go, I see these things. So anyway, so that's what's happening with the blue zones. So now my thoughts on to your question too are we've never seen an all raw community. It's said that the Essenes, as you all know, as the Essenes, which were a Jewish sect that existed around the time of uh, Jesus of Nazareth, um, and there's some talk about him having visited with them because we have no record, at least in the New Testament at all, of what Jesus was doing between I think the age of 12 and 30 when he began his ministry, right? So he was kind of absent, and so there's a lot of stories out there about what he did, where he went, what he did. One of them is that he was with a group, a Jewish, very religious, serious spiritual group called the Essenes, and he learned a lot from them, or he learned a lot, I mean, whatever. He just was with them, um, but they were raw from what I can tell. The Essene Gospel of Peace. You should read that and stuff like that. Anyway, they were raw, and they were living what I think 230 years. So anyway, but there are no raw. So my thoughts on your question are, well, the blue zones are shrinking. I mean, they live to 100. They used to live to 130, 140. So that's tragic, yeah. And and now, and there are no raw groups. They never compare to raw. The only studies I've ever seen with comparing the raw was the one with Luigi Fontana, who was a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, and he took a cohort of 18 to 80-year-olds who had been 100% raw for 3 years versus a regular group, a cohort of 18 to 80 who just ate normal food. And then he just did lots of different blood tests on them just to see, the differences, right? Because as you know, when we look at blood tests, and we say, "Oh, you're normal," well, so okay? Well, am I healthy, right? Because normal levels and healthy levels are not at all the same, not at all, right? Look at the normal people in your community. Well, those are the people that make up the reference range in the laboratories you go to. All right. So if you go to Quest or whatever it is, BioReference or whatever you go to in your community, their reference ranges is based on the community. So, and the average 1 out of 3 Americans, and I think Europeans now, 3 4, are going to get cancer in their lifetime. Every 25, 30 seconds, have a heart attack. I mean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What's the percentage of diabetes and all that sort of thing? So when we're looking at normal ranges, that's what when we're talking about reference ranges on blood tests, that's what they are. So what we don't have are healthy ranges. And that's what I was in touch with Dr. Fontana about doing that years ago, many years ago, because I thought, well, why don't we, like, you're there, you're in St. Louis, I was in New York at the time, I'm in New York, and we can get somebody on the West Coast, and let's just start getting accumulating blood from people that have been eating healthy for a while, and try to get some healthy reference ranges. Right. So anyway, so eating whole grains, yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of people. Listen, a lot of people talk about it too. There's a lot of controversy about that, but I'm just talking about the original physiology, not our what's happened to the world with civilization, not what's happened with that, but our original physiology. Oh, thank you, Christy. Cup of my cup. Our original physiology, like check out the animals in the wild before. And I'm talking about like 100, at least 100 years ago, at least. Because now they've all been poisoned. Everything is poisoned. There's poison everywhere. When they do autopsies on polar bears, and then up in near the North Pole, who've never seen a human being, and they do autopsies on them, they find PCBs in their fat and stuff like that. Right? Why? Because they're eating the seals and they're eating the fish that come from all over the place. So the world's poisoned. But prior to that, prior to the world getting poisoned, a wild animal did not get heart attacks, did not get strokes, did not get cancer, did not get arthritis, did not get depression, insomnia, nothing like that. No, what we call degenerative conditions. They died from trauma. They got eaten, or they broke something and they couldn't move, or starvation, or old age. That was it. All right. So, and they lived out their lives under the auspices of instinct, and that was it. Right? They didn't have any cultural to live up to. Right? They didn't. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Do you recommend tamoxifen for bilateral breast cancer, or use diet as an estrogen blocker? Yeah, I don't rely on tamoxifen. I never, I don't think I've ever prescribed it. Tamoxifen blocks estrogen receptor alpha. Yeah, so does estriol, and so does soy, and so does flax. Yes, soy, flax, estriol. They also block it, but they also are agonists. In other words, they stimulate the beta receptor. And when they stimulate estrogen receptor beta, they actually shrink down tumors. So that's what I would not only, that's why I would use that instead. Right. But yeah, caffeine, for sure. I would not use tamoxifen. And it's got a limited use anyway. You can only use it for 5 years. Otherwise, you'll have a good chance of getting uterine cancer. And then they'll put you on aromatase inhibitors and all that's. Okay, so what's your opinion on safely ingesting or nebulizing food grade hydrogen peroxide? Well, listen, let me tell you. Food grade hydrogen peroxide. The man who did all the work on that, his name was Charles Farr, Farr, MD, PhD. He lived in Oklahoma. He, I knew him and his wife Skoshi. And by the way, Skoshi, I hope if you ever hear this, I know you're not watching, but if you ever hear this, hope you don't mind. But it's interesting. It's just a side. I'm sorry. The word Skoshi in Japan means little. So when she was born in Japan, she was American parents, but somehow born in Japan, and she was real little, so they called her Skoshi. Kept her name. Amazing. Anyway, but Charles Farr, MD, PhD, is the guy that did all the work, all the scientific work on hydrogen peroxide. And if you want to read a really, really good book on hydrogen peroxide, and you all should, it's interesting, it's fun. It's called A Medical Miracle by William Campbell Douglas Jr., MD. MD. It's called Medical Miracle. Anyway, it talks about Charlie Farr, and that's the book I read. By the way, that's interesting. I had a conventional practice, and that's the book I read, Medical Miracle. I read it. My uncle handed it to me. My uncle was my everything. Anyway, he handed me this book, and I read it. And when I closed the last page, I said, "That's it. I can't do this anymore." Closed my practices up and went around the world to learn about other ways of helping people regain their health. One of the guys, and so that book there, The Medical Miracle, says it was dedicated to Charles Farr, MD, PhD, to whom the world owes a great debt. But anyway, that's where I went first and hung out, and I stayed there for a few months. So I worked with him with hydrogen peroxide. So he specifically said, don't drink it because it will, if it runs into red blood cells or iron, which have iron, you're going to cause damage. If it breaks apart, it can break apart things. So he specifically said, don't drink it. Now, I think nebulizing it could be okay because you're not. It depends, really. It depends. You got to remember, you're talking about an oxidant. It's going to oxidize. And you want it to oxidize things that you want it to oxidize, and you don't want it to oxidize tissues that are in good health. You want it to oxidize tissues that are damaged and causing problems. So inhaling it, nebulizing it, as long as there's it depends if you no iron. It depends on your condition. But I know a lot of people are recommending it. But I just remember him. He's the guy that wrote it. In fact, he was nominated for the Nobel Prize in '92 for his work on peroxide. He didn't get the Nobel Prize, but got the nomination. But he's the guy that figured it all out. I mean, hydrogen peroxide is a central part of metabolism. Do you know that that's what's necessary for your body, for your thyroid to make thyroid hormone? You need peroxide. Anyway, it's a very central chemical in our mitochondria for making energy for everything. So it's very, very important. So he gave it IV. And the pharmaceutical grade hydrogen peroxide was 0.03%. Very, very low. You can't give higher. And so we would give people to that IV, and they'd come, it'd be all day. It'd be all day because you have to give it very slow. And it'd be all day. And they'd come in with the flu, sick, and all that, and leave without flu. So it was pretty good stuff. It was pretty good. Very good. But so I really don't, I would just be careful about ingesting it in other ways because if it runs into, it can oxidize healthy tissues. But I do think that nebulizing it might be okay. I just wouldn't drink it just because he said specifically don't drink it because He has seen, he did research with it. And he found out that it caused problems. He found a lot of problems. He found that it eventually caused some gastrointestinal cancers when he was working with animals on it. So, I is endometriosis a precancerous condition, and can it be cured holistically? Okay, it's not precancerous at all. Um, it just endometriosis just means somehow part of the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus, got outside of it, the universe, and it's somewhere else. And so every time you're on that part of the month when your estrogen is rising, those are growing and they're causing pain and stuff like that. So, uh, um, can it be cured? Well, it's not a disease. It's just there's no such thing as a disease. Remember that, please, everyone. So you don't cure it. But in other words, can this go away? Can those little spots of endometrium that are around the abdomen that are not in the uterus, can they go away? And that I don't know. I don't think so. That's the problem. That's the problem. I mean, I guess you could go in and with a laparoscope through the belly button, umbilicus, go in there and try to if you could find them and remove them. But otherwise, they're like little islands of endometrial tissue. So yeah, really hard. Um, so what you want to do is just balance your hormones really well. If you have endometriosis, balance your hormones really well. Make sure you don't have too much estrogen. That you're with biologically identical hormones. Work with somebody who really knows what they're doing, and that you got enough progesterone and all that, so that whatever you're going through with it, you can minimize. And then yeah. So, what is the way to heal diverticulosis? What are some dietary changes that could help? Okay, diverticulosis, again, for those who might not remember, that diverticulosis is just these little outpocketings in the colon that came about because of eating non-plant food. So what do you got to do? Just eat a lot of plant food. That's it. Eat plants, and don't cook them as much as you can. Try to do 80% uncooked. Oh, don't try to do 100%. But if you don't, if it's going to disturb your mind, if you can't get beyond that, then 20% steamed or boiled. But that will help. That will help. That will do it. Now, let's go to. I have to go to. Okay, let's go to. My husband has esophageal cancer. Always ate healthy. Always went to the gym at home and cooked meals. How has this happened? Is it hereditary? Esophageal cancer is there's no I don't know of any hereditary cancers that are specifically esophagus. As you know, there's less than 5% of all cancers have any hereditary component to them. But yeah, no, and usually um, what produces cancer is chronic inflammation, right? So, for example, the chronic inflammation of smoking cigarettes on the lungs. um, anyway, chronic inflammation results in, first it's like if you're chronically damaging something, you start to get calluses, right? Or mailmen, the old fashioned mailmen, you used to get their bone would be really big here because they carried that big sack day after day after day, and pressure on the bone made the bone grow, right? So, so anyway, chronic inflammation can cause that. So I don't know if he was having esophageal reflux and he didn't know it, but you said he was always healthy. So I don't know. That's and it's probably usually the distal I don't know. Did he have gastritis or not gastritis, but esophageal reflux or any of that sort of thing? We'd have to talk. But if he had no symptoms, always really healthy, then yeah, it's kind of strange. It's kind of strange. I agree with you, 100%. Okay, here's something from, we're going to go TikTok now. Chronic inflammation and cancer. I have inflammatory arthritis. I refuse to take harsh medications, so I'm just living with chronic inflammation in my joints. What can I do? Okay, well, this is really a good question for all of us because, as I was talking before about Professor Luigi Fontana, what he found was that we talked about the fact that he had people that ate uncooked food, raw food, for 3 years, at least 3 years, 100%, versus normal eaters. And looking at all the different blood tests, he found that the raw had an undetectable CRP, C-reactive proteins. In other words, inflammation. So they were uninflamed. Dr. What's his name? Oh, wow, I forgot his name. Anyway, this was back in the 30s in Switzerland. They found the same thing. They found that people that ate cooked food, they developed a leukocytosis, which is high white blood cells, versus people that ate raw food, cooked food. I mean, if they ate cooked food, they had a leukocytosis. They had, because the body saw the cooked food as being foreign, and had developed a response. Whereas the uncooked food, the raw food, the salads, did not cause that. I'm sorry. I know you guys don't. I know a lot of you don't want to know that. So when I talk about raw food, just plug it up. Okay, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want that to be true. Okay, good. Me either. Here's what I want. I want pasta and meatballs and sausages and brajol, and to be good for me. I want it to be good for me. I want it to make me live forever. While we're at it, you know what I'd like to do? I really love to be able to fly. I think that'd be really cool. You think I'd work on that one? If I'm going to make pasta good for me, then I'm going to have to make sure that I can fly. Right? So I'm just saying. Okay, so regarding nut milk, and when I said I eat this almost every day, somebody said, nut milk, you said it was fresh. Do you make it your own or buy it? I make my own. Yeah, it's very easy to make. Nut milk is like the easiest thing. Even I can make it. I'm not really good at. I'm not a good chef, but yeah, you just soak the nuts overnight. Wake up in the morning, clean them. Just rinse them off. Put them in a high-speed blender like a Vitamix. Add water. Pour them through a nut bag. Squeeze the nut bag. Which is just cloth. Or you could use any kind of thing. But then if you're using like a colander or something like that, and you're pouring it through there, it's going to get full of nut flakes. You're going to have to take that. It's just more time consuming. Anyway, yeah, fresh every morning. It's really easy. Really easy. Quick. Again, is there a treatment for HPV? plantar warts. Yeah, this is all kind. So we know warts are really what they call viruses, and HPV is what they call a virus, and all that. So anyway, the best therapies that have been found in for what we call viruses have always been the oxidative therapies. So like hydrogen peroxide, ozone, ultraviolet blood irradiation. These are really good for virus. I mean, really good at eliminating what we call viruses. So the question is, do we have viruses or do we have exosomes? And that is like maybe a question that we'll never know, or at least not in this. I don't think in this century. But um, yeah, oxidative therapies. So if you've got a good ozone access to good ozone, 10 pass or the EBO, very very good, very very good. Yes, 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 yes. And UBI ultraviolet blood irradiation, same. It's another oxidative therapy. And then hydrogen peroxide, intravenous hydrogen peroxide is another oxidative therapy. And these have to be always distinguished from oxygenation therapies, which is what hyperbaric is. Hyperbaric is increasing the oxygenation, not oxidation. It's they're tricky there. The words are tricky. Different. They have different meanings. Okay. So oxygenation just means you're increasing the oxygen content of the blood. Because remember, the blood is uh, can carry up to 10% in the plasma, the serum can carry up to 10% oxygen because all the 90% of the oxygen we have is carried in the red blood cells. So the rest could be carried, but they're only our serum is only like 1%, maybe maximum 3%. So you could really fill that up with oxygen by doing hyperbaric, and that really really helps. We've seen it reverse strokes, heart attacks, stuff like that. Really good stuff. That's oxygenation, different than oxidation. Oxidative therapies are very important for viruses. Facebook. What are your thoughts on cryoablation? Cryoablation is I've seen it. Uh, I like it. I like it. I like cryoablation. I even like RFA, radio frequency ablation, for some liver masses and things like that. Um, I think it's great if you can do those things, just to decrease the tumor burden. Um, and they don't neither of them increase cancer stem cells and things like that. So they're very very good. So I think it's good. Now that doesn't always work. You got to remember too. Remember, it's not the tumors. Okay, remember that it's not the tumors. The tumors are are manifestations of an underlying situation, right? Of a toxic situation, toxemia, and that's what they are. All right, uh, so please keep that in mind because you can't just um, like I have someone right now who had a cryoablation and they're having a problem come back again in that area. But you just got to, in other words, if you get rid of it, that's fantastic because you want to reduce your tumor burden just to reduce the whole. Yeah, so you can if you reduce the tumor burden, then you can kind of it's kind of like your immune system can really go work uh, put more energy into what's left, right? Okay, so but you've got to change your internal biochemistry. You've got to change your internal biochemistry. You've got to change your internal biochemistry. Your internal biochemistry has to change. It has to change. It has to change through diet, cleansing, colonics, lymphatics, exercise, movement, uh, meditation, prayer. Now, I want to talk about. All right. Okay, one last question, then I want to talk about some other stuff that came up. But anyway, here. So Dr. Thomas Levy, you all might know him, stated that 5 grams of liposomal vitamin C is equal to 50 grams of IV vitamin C. Typical dosage of IV vitamin C is 50 grams twice a day at a 6-hour interval. Therapeutic goal is 500 parts of vitamin C in the blood plasma. Liposomal vitamin C is absorbed 90% by the cell and should not have any effect on kidney since it is not filtered out of the kidney. It's my understanding that the primary reason the vitamin C cannot be given more than 3 times a week because of probable kidney damage. Liposomal vitamin C would seemingly be able to be taken 7 days a week. Okay, so anyway, Dr. Thomas Levy, I have a lot of respect for the guy. I like him. I know him. And he's a medical doctor and an attorney, MD, JD. He wrote a great book called, what is it? The Cure for Everything. It's about vitamin C. Great research, wonderful. But here's the thing about liposomal. First of all, it's not 500 parts of vitamin C in blood plasma. It's 350 to 450 milligrams per deciliter of ascorbate. Plasma ascorbate is what we call therapeutic, and the therapeutic in that the vitamin C is going to now be able to oxidize cancer cells because cancer cells don't have an enzyme called catalase. Remember, vitamin C is doing other things as well. 3 other very important things it's doing to eliminate cancer. But the one thing, the oxidative, killing it with the pro-oxidant effect, not antioxidant. So then when your oncologist says don't take vitamin C because it's antioxidant and it's going to undo what we're doing with chemo, they're wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. The fact is that it is pro-oxidant at high levels. Okay, so we've talked about that before. So it's 350 to 450 milligrams per deciliter is the thing. Now, so the reason the vitamin C is not given more than 3 times a week, I don't think the reason that people don't give it more than 3 times a week is because of, has nothing to do with that. It's because they don't. They don't. Now we give it. We've given it. What I'm trying to do is to give it on a continuous basis for 168 hours, which is 1 week. Okay, it's hard on the kidneys. So the liposomal. What happens to the liposomal is that the liposomal is in little. The vitamin C is put into these little lipid envelopes. So when they don't get absorbed through the normal channels in the gut. They get absorbed through what are called lacteals, which are lymphatic vessels there that take it to the lymph, and it goes up through the lymph and back and the lymph dumps through the thoracic duct into the systemic circulation. So it does wind up back in the systemic circulation. That it has to. That's what it does. But that's how our body absorbs fats too, through the lacteals when we're eating fat, right? It gets packaged in these little mycelials, and they get picked up by the lacteals, and they get dumped into the through the thoracic duct into the blood. So now, but we've given it 3 days, 5 days. We were doing. So the figure, and that's very interesting. I've been doing a lot of work with vitamin C, been thinking about it for years. So my idea was, okay, so when you get to that therapeutic level, how long are you at that therapeutic level? And I don't know if Dr. Levy actually knows. I mean, did he measure and found that you actually had those plasma levels? Because I would love to see that. If you have that data, whoever you are, if you have that data, please send it to me. Harry? Yeah. Please send it to me. I'd love to see that data that you can get 350. You can't get that much orally. I don't care what you do. You can't get 350 milligrams per deciliter of plasma ascorbate. Cannot. But if you've got proof otherwise, let's please. That would be fantastic. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. But from what I understand. So anyway, so my idea was we're going to give a loading dose of vitamin C to get the plasma level up to that, and then a small maintenance dose of 25 grams per hour for, let's say, 3 hours, then down to 10 grams per hour. You go down like that, because now it takes less and less and less to keep you at that therapeutic level. So the longer you go, so perhaps we could do that for, let's say, 168 hours. How about twice that? So 2 weeks. If we could, and maybe after about 3 or 4 days, you only have to give 5 grams an hour. Whatever it is you have to give, because you won't have to give that much. And you're drinking lots of water. You're eating really healthy alkaline forming foods. So you're not getting acidotic, and you're not getting dehydrated. So you're not going to form calcium oxalate stones, which is the big fear. And you're not going to do that. So I wish we had the place to do that, which we would do that. But I think, really, Harry, the reason people don't do it, doctors don't do it, is because they don't think about it. It's not that they have a reason. Most doctors don't think about it, and they also don't do a lot of the really scientific scrutiny. For example, I see them mixing glutathione in with their vitamin C, which is crazy. Or they just, there's all kinds of crazy things that you neutralize, you make things ineffective. You can't just do that. Anyway, a very good question, and please send me the answer. Please send me that research if you have that. I'm not in America now. I'm not in touch with Tom anymore. I guess I could find him, but I'd like to know that. If anybody can help me with that. Now, there was a question that I saw over on I forget what it was. It says the dosage of ivermectin. What is the dosage of ivermectin? Well, no one knows. I mean, I haven't been able to find it. Now, I'll go through a little bit of stuff that I did find, so that's very important for you to understand. But anyway, so when we're killing parasites, it's a whole different story than when we're using it to get rid of stem cells and to have all of its other anti-cancer, all the anti-cancer mechanisms. But 12 milligrams 3 times a day, plus we would be doing probably mebendazole at least 100 milligrams 3 times a day, at least. Or fenbendazole 222 milligrams 3 times a day. And praziquantel 600 milligrams 3 times a day, and perhaps parantopamowate 725 milligrams 3 times a day. That's a lot, real heavy. Yeah, talk about liver enzymes going up. Liver enzymes will go up, and then they'll come down. They'll go up and they'll come down. They'll go up and they'll come down. And in the end, after 5-6 cycles, the parasites are pretty much gone. They can't take it. Okay, and then you break that when you do 3 weeks on, 1 week off. Then you have you can do the anti fungals like fluconazole, nystatin. Okay. Good morning from Bangkok. All right, yay. It's late already, 8:17. So what I wanted to kind of bring up with you was one of the other things about ivermectin that's really important, and that is its ability to turn. Now, everyone, a lot of people talk to me about what the doctors are calling immunotherapy. The oncologists are calling immunotherapy, right? And what they're calling immunotherapy is really it's blocking a specific part of the immune system. So here's what happens. T cells, B cells, natural killer cells, macrophages, dendritic cells, right? All of the main players in the immune system to eliminate the cancer. They have on their surfaces this receptor, It's called a programmed death receptor. Okay. And then they also have these same kinds of cells also have what are called the programmed death receptor ligand. So the PD1 and PD1 and PD2, and then the PDL, which is a ligand. What is a ligand? A ligand is a medical term, a scientific term for something that attaches to something else, right? So the ligand for an insulin receptor is insulin. It's just a term. Okay, so it's not a big deal. It's not hard to understand. Okay, so that's it. So now, and so, and this, and also the ligand is also this ligand, which is the thing that's able to connect to the receptor, is found on solid tumors, breast, bladder, prostate, pancreas, colon, all of them. Okay. All right. Now, one may come together when the PDL, programmed death ligand, connects to the programmed death receptor. It basically causes the activated T cells, the activated killer T cells, to die. It gets rid of them. It turns them off. It also inactivates natural killer cells by downregulating B cell function and stuff like that, right? It just turns off the immune system. Now, so what they've developed are these monoclonal antibodies that bind to either the PD1 or the PDL1, bind to it and block that process from happening. And if they can block that process from happening, then the immune system can kill the cancer, which is what it would do normally. So it's a great idea. It's a great idea. The problem is it only works in 25 to 40% of the people. And in the people that it works in, many, if not most of them, it become resistant and it stops working. And the reason it stops working is because of the upregulation, the increasing of what are called Tregs. Now, reg stands for regulatory. The T cell is a T cell. So there are T4 cells, remember, and T8 cells. The T4s are the T helper cells, and the T8 cells are the ones that they're the effector cells for doing stuff, right? And you get T4s and T8, right? Remember the old days, everyone was talking about HIV infections, right? And they looked at the T4 to the T8 ratios, right? Remember that was all a big deal. But anyway, so it's still a big deal. We still look at it. I still look at lymphocyte subsets on everybody. Very, very important. But anyway, let me see here. The end. Yeah. So anyway, the mechanism by which they become resistant, the people that were responding to these checkpoint inhibitors which is like Keytruda, those kinds, nivolumab, those kinds of things. You probably all know these terms. The reason they become is because they actually, what they wind up doing, these drugs, is they wind up upregulating the Treg function. And the Treg function actually is probably the leader of the pack for downregulating, turning off the immune system. So what they do, that's why these don't really work. So it's like you remember there was an old commercial way back like 50 years ago, you can't fool Mother Nature. Well, that's kind of the way it is. You can't change the course of a river. You can't change the course of a river. I mean, I guess you could with, nowadays with our modern construction equipment, we could dig a bed. I'm sure we could figure it out, right? But I mean, in general, you don't change the course of a river. And I don't even know if they could do that, because I think in the way nature forms, and because of the laws of gravity and all the other physical laws which we may or may not even understand, even if you did change it, it would probably go back to being the way it was. It's just the way it is. Um, it's just like when you're giving uh, high doses of testosterone to someone. Pretty soon they have really high levels, and then and the percent free, which is the strong part, is really high too. After a while, it becomes small again. It becomes less. It becomes again not enough, even though the total is still high, because it's produced the binding globulin that grabs all of it. So in other words, the end result, the net result, what nature wants is what's going to happen, because nature's the boss. Nature rules. Nature, right? I mean, what is nature? What is nature? The intelligence. It's what is. It's what is. Nature is what is. And I'm talking about what is naturally, not what comes from us. This is not nature. What we produce is artificial. We produce artifact. We produce garbage. We produce junk. That's what we produce. Because you know what? This wonderful brand new iPhone 400 that you just got is going to become trash one day. It's going to become garbage. I don't care how cool it is. And the computers that we're using right now are going to become trash one day. That's what we produce. That's the net effect of what we produce is trash. Okay? And the earth reflects it. The earth reflects it pretty much. We're pretty much all sick. And more of us are getting sick because of the accumulation of toxicities on the planet. And these toxicities get into us, and we become toxemic, and our toxicities build up, and we wind up getting everything you can imagine. Chronically fermenting cells, the blood vessels get plugged up in our heart, in our brains, our muscles, and someone before was talking about arthritis. Raw food is arthritis. Okay, and make sure you're getting proper nutrition. Clean out your colon. That other woman that we were talking about with your arthritis, clean out your colon, clean out your get lymphatic work, start exercising, go to bed early, stuff like that. Make sure you have a healthy relationship with your family and your spouse and your kids. Work on that. All right. So, anyway, so anyway, so the cancer cells, as I was saying before, cancer cells are really kind of like nature at its highest kind of adaptive. These chronically fermenting cells are at their highest adaptive capabilities, and they actually, what they start doing is they start producing stuff, antigens on their surface that say that they are self. In other words, because the immune system sees two things: self and non-self. And if it sees non-self, it gets rid of it. And if it sees self, it ignores it. So the cancer cells start producing antigens that say, no, we're self. We're not non-self. Yeah, that's one thing it does. And they also, as I said, they upregulate, and they have more of these of the ligand that connects to the PD, the program death receptor, and then when that happens, it just stops the immune system, turns off the immune system. So they upregulate that. So they're pretty careful in doing that. I mean, they're pretty. They're pretty adept. Cancer cells are pretty adept. That's why I'm saying coming at them straight on is really difficult. So the way that I've approached cancer, and I think we have such great successes, is because you know, like you all know, you can take the latest and greatest of the best chemotherapies that just came out, right? The most poisonous, disgusting, horrible chemotherapy, and you give it to someone, right? And after 3 cycles, the cancer cell says, wow, that was delicious, give me some more. But the rest of your body is falling apart. Okay, so it'll adapt really easily. Like cancer cells just walked out of Gold's Gym. They're buffed, they're ready. Okay, so don't fight them. What you do is exhaust them. Exhaust them. Do the vitamin C 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week. Do the ozone 3 times a week. Do the ALA 3 times a week. Do intravenous curcumin and intravenous quercetin 2 to 3 times a week. Do B17 5 times a week. Do artesunate twice a week. Uh, you just do, and every one of those different therapies requires a different enzymatic solution to resolve it that cancer cells don't have. So that's what we call metabolic therapy. So if you're doing that, it just gets exhausted. Plus, now you've changed your diet. So now you're no longer eating foods that feed the whole chronically fermenting cell process. Instead, your foods are feeding the immune system and making it stronger. And then the third thing we're doing is you're waking up your immune system with things like thymosin alpha 1, with things like IL-2, really amazing things. Okay, and you do all that, and that's how success with cancer happens. I got to do it all. Can't just do any one part of it. You can't actually. That's not true. You can just decide and know. You can know that you're going to heal, and eat right, fast and cleanse and eat right. I've seen it. I've had it. I've had the most incredible situations happen. And I think I've all told you about this story here. But this one story here it's just real quickly. I'll try to make it short because I'm probably boring a lot of people. But there was a woman that came to me in the year 2000, in June of 2000. And, I remember it quite well. And she came to me and she had cancer, breast cancer all over her body. And she came because she had her lymph nodes and her right axilla were so matted that she had pain. She couldn't lift up her arm. She said, "Look, I know I'm going to die. I only have 3 months to live. But can you at least help me so I can lift up my arm a little better?" And so I gave her this long discussion about what to do. And she said, wow, you're right. That's what I have to do. Change my way of living, and then I'll heal. Okay, I'm not going to get vitamin C. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I'm just going to do I'm just going to do that. I said, oh, okay, well, come by once a month at least and let me know how you're doing. So she did. She came by once a month, and she was doing it, fasting, cleansing, colonics, eating just nothing but 100% uncooked food, and just, she knew it. And every month her arm was getting big. She was pretty, now, so by December, remember I met her in June. This is by December, she was like back to back. She was back. She was healthy, vibrant, all that sort of thing. In January, she had a fatal automobile accident. So there was an autopsy performed. And on the autopsy, they found no cancer. They found no cancer. That's pretty scientific proof that works. So what did we learn, her husband and I? We learned that he said to me, these last 6 months she wasn't dying, she was living. And the truth is, the number of days is not up to us. Right? I don't know. I could slip on a carpet and fracture C2 and dead, whatever. I mean, we don't know. We don't know. Nobody was promised tomorrow. Nobody has a contract with God for tomorrow. And so the number of days not up to us. But it's how we're living. It's how we're living. But anyway, that's how I know that works. That would be the only way. But other than that, you've got to overwhelm it. If you don't quite have that faith, and I'm not talking about religious faith, I'm talking about, well, in a sense, it's a spiritual. It's knowing that you're going to heal. Anyway, so again, we were talking about the reason I brought this up with that, the reason I brought this up about what happens with this they call immunotherapy is that ivermectin. Okay, so immune therapy also only works in cells that are in tumors that are infiltrated with T cells. Okay, so if they're infiltrated with T cells, it's called a hot tumor, and if they're not infiltrated with T cells, it's called a cold tumor. So now, if you give these blockers and you block that PD-1 from suppressing the immune system, but there's no T cells there, it can't do anything. So how do you get the T cells to surround and be all over that tumor? Ivermectin. So ivermectin actually converts cold tumors into hot tumors. All right. Now, breast cancer is notorious for having cold tumors. So breast cancer, so a lot of reasons why the immune checkpoint inhibitors haven't worked with breast cancer is because it is well known to have cold tumors, to not be infiltrated, except with ivermectin. And there's a lot of amazing studies out now showing that ivermectin plus the immune checkpoint inhibitors are very, very good. So what I like to use is a combination of many things, right? The TA1, because we want to increase your T cells, right? Especially if you're old, over 40 or 50. But even if you're younger and you're just sick, you still. But anyway, especially if you're older, the TA1, thymosin alpha 1, which is the peptide, is going to increase it. You want to use the IL-2 to produce gamma interferon, which is going to recruit all your macrophages and all that. Once you're doing that for about 10 days, then you can use GC-MOF to activate your macrophages, and then you can then you can use the checkpoint inhibitors at the same time, and then it's going to be pretty amazing. It's going to be pretty amazing. But you've got to downregulate these Tregs. These Tregs are and Tregs are what are lacking in people with what they call autoimmune conditions. Because when they have autoimmune, then their immune system is all over the place and eating them up. So you got to have a balance. So Tregs have a very important function, but they get upregulated by these chronically fermenting cells, right? Now, but the ivermectin, again, remember, it does. I mean, it induces the PAC1 mediated cytostatic autophagy. It induces capsase dependent apoptosis. It induces immunogenic cell death. It inhibits proliferation by inhibiting the YEA associated protein 1, the YAP1. Ivermectin inhibits the WNT cell factor. WNT is really important. Anyway, ivermectin is an angiogenesis inhibitor. I mean, what? What? All this stuff. Now, what is the dosage? That was the question about what is the dosage. So in humans, the toxicity of ivermectin is very low, and no serious adverse reactions have been found in healthy volunteers when they give as much as 120 milligrams. Nothing happens at 120 milligrams. So even when you're taking 12 milligrams 3 times a day, that's 36 milligrams. Okay, so then when they looked at they looked at several studies, and 2 studies revealed that ivermectin exerts a preferentially inhibitory effect on cancer cells, whereas its role in normal cells was significantly reduced or ineffective. In other words, the effects that it has to kill the cancer cells is only on cancer cells. It doesn't do that with healthy cells. What? Yeah. How does this happen? This is all true stuff. Now, we get similar type things with the benzimidazoles that we were talking about before, which were the fenbendazole, mebendazole, albendazole. Anyway, so the highest dosage, the dosage that they found to be good in cancer was 0.4 milligrams per kilogram of ivermectin, 0.4 milligrams per kilogram. So take your weight, because your weight, if your weight is in pounds, just divide it by 2.2. If your weight is in kilograms, then you got kilograms times 0.4, and that's how many 0.4 milligrams. That's the ivermectin dose, which is way lower than remember the highest dose we talked about that that would be that we would start to perhaps see trouble from ivermectin would be 2 milligrams per kilogram. Anyway, in these various studies they after about 10 to anywhere from 10 to 42 days treatment with just the ivermectin reduced the tumor volume by more than 50%. Big deal. This is a big deal. By the way, somebody had asked me a question this week, or wanted me to help them with their mother look at the study. Well, here this is a study here, because this was done with triple negative breast cancer, right? So triple negative breast cancer, which is considered to be the most difficult to deal with of the breast cancers, is can be taken care of using ivermectin and the checkpoint inhibitors, and also changing all the things we talk about. So now, somebody else was asking me, what is adjuvant therapies? Why don't they work? You all heard the term adjuvant therapies, right? Adjuvant, yeah. Okay. So here, let's look at the National Cancer Institute's definition of adjuvant therapy. Okay, so adjuvant therapy: additional cancer treatments given after the primary treatment to lower the risk that the cancer will lower the risk that it will come back. Adjuvant therapy may include chemotherapy, radiation therapy, hormone therapy, targeted therapy, or biological therapy. Okay, now when they said the primary, what do they consider the primary treatment? Surgery is considered the primary treatment, even though the data show that it doesn't necessarily at all help. Sometimes it does, yes. Sometimes it's life-saving, absolutely life-saving, has to be done. And at other times, there are cases where a person has a small tumor, they have the surgery, and that's it, and they go on living a normal life. Yeah, those are rare circumstances. You have to understand they're rare. Okay, but anyway, the primary treatment for cancer is called surgery. So adjuvant means they're going to add this afterwards. Now, there's another term called neoadjuvant, and this is given before. It's chemotherapy given before, it's preoperative. So before the surgery, they give you this this chemo or radiation, or whatever they're going to do, or hormonal therapy to shrink things down so they can get a better surgical field. They also say that they think that it gets rid of microscopic parts of the tumor, which they can't really see anyway because they're microscopic, and there's no way you're going to get your microscope into someone's breast or into someone's pancreas. So anyway, that's part of their claims. And then what time we got here? Okay, we're getting, yeah. Okay. So anyway, what is neoadjuvant therapy? Neoadjuvant therapy is the same thing as adjuvant therapy. It's just that it is done before the tumor. Now, if it's done before radiation, because there's two kinds of what they call primary therapies, primary treatments. One can be surgery, and some primary treatments are considered radiation or radiotherapy. All right. So if they give the chemo before the surgery, they call it neoadjuvant. If they do it before the radiation, they call it induction chemotherapy. Well, what we have found with induction chemotherapy is that the problem is it actually converts the induction chemotherapy, right? Decreases the number of cells, the number of tumors that would have would have been eliminated by the radiation therapy. It reduces them. So it turns out that's not true. It doesn't work. Now, so the question, I think the lady was asking me, the question was, what are the so adjuvant therapies? Why do they work? Why do they ultimately fail? And all that sort of thing. Well, the reason chemo and radiation and all that would ultimately fail is because cancer is not the tumors. What we're calling this condition, these chronically fermenting balls, these chronically fermenting areas in the body called tumors, are due to an underlying systemic toxicity. So if you remove these, or if you use chemotherapy, it's not going to work. Now, if you cut them out, it's not going to work. They're going to come back. You're going to get a new crop, just like cutting off all the poisonous apples on the apple tree. Next fall you're going to have a new harvest. You're going to have a new bunch of apples growing because you haven't changed the tree. You haven't changed the soil. You haven't changed it. It's just common sense. So the reason adjuvant therapies don't really work is because you haven't changed. If you haven't changed anything, you can't get different results. You've got to change. You've got to change. And when I have patients that I'm still talking to 18 years later, 20 years later, it's because that's what they did. Thank you, Uzma. Uzma, thank you. Please, can you have a look at M Formula who sell 3,500 apples? They are a Republican cancer care company. Yeah. Okay. So the name of someone was telling me here about the MICS formula. Look at Mix Formula, who sell the 350 to 500 liposomal vitamins. All right, yeah. But I'm just talking about physiology. And no matter what you take to get those levels in your plasma is just keep. I'd like to see the results. Please, Shamsa, send me the results. Somebody send me the results. Okay. All right. So anyway, I want to get back to some stuff. Anyway, so as you know, okay, you got it now. So what's the dosage of ivermectin? I would say while you're using it as an antiparasitic, and you got to get rid of their parasites, right? You can do 12 milligrams 3 times a day, and I would say just as an ongoing thing to keep, because it's the cancer stem cells that spread. Remember that, and ivermectin eliminates them. Right. So I would do like 12 milligrams a day. Yeah, that's the dosage I would come to. Maybe even double it. That you could twice a day. So now we all know what cancer stem cells are, right? Wasn't there a question here? Anyway, and this is something I would like everyone to listen to. This is a very important thing. It's maybe the most important thing I'm going to talk about today. And that is this, that when you have surgery, when the doctor tells you, and you feel better about it, you want to get the surgery, you get a lumpectomy, or you get a Whipple procedure for your pancreatic or something, or partial gastrectomy, or whatever you get, a partial colectomy or something like that. You get that. And then they say they want to do radiation and chemo. So you say to them, why are you doing it? Was that a successful surgery? Did you get everything? If the doctor says, yeah, we got it. We got clean margins. We got it all. This is just to be safe. Okay. So what I want you to understand is that I found a couple there. There was a just so you know. What are cancer stem cells? Cancer stem cells are the cells. They make up maybe 1% up to 3% of a tumor. Those are the only cells that can become a new tumor. All the other cells in a tumor cannot metastasize, cannot spread. And remember, 90% of the people who don't die from treatment will die from the metastasis, not the primary tumor. And that's because of the stem cells. So what they call treatment failures are due to the cancer stem cells. And the cancer stem cells, why? Because cancer stem cells, like all stem cells, not only can use go through normal Krebs cycle, efficient mitochondrial production of energy. They also can eat fat, burn fat. They can live on ketones. They can live on other fats as well. So they're very metabolically plastic, very metabolically able to adapt. All right. Why? Because these are a stem cell is a cell that's going to survive. Like in the beginning, when you are just a one-celled or when you're a one cell, and then it's called a blastocyst, and it starts to divide, and you've got a few cells and all that sort of thing, and then you've got what's called a little ball there called a morula. These are embryonic stem cells, and these embryonic stem cells, each one of them can become the whole human being. They have the potential. Okay, so they're called pluripotential. Okay, and then by the time they become adult stem cells, when we have, so what do we have now? We have in our body, my lung cells have it, the heart cells have it. They're adult stem cells. Those are pretty much already going to be just lung. The ones in the lung are going to be lung. The ones in the fat are going to be fat. The ones it's kind of like that. Now you can modify that. And that's what we do with stem cell therapies. You give different growth factors, and you can actually modify what the stem cells will do. But without that, that's what they'll be. But anyway, so embryonic stem cells and cancer stem cells have a lot in common, okay, by their surface markers and all that sort of thing. So it's the cancer stem cells that spread, okay. So anyway, so what would they say here? So here's a classical definition. Cancer stem cells are a type of adult or progenitor cell found in cancer. These cells generally represent just 1 to 3% of all cells in the tumor, but they are the only cells with the ability to regenerate malignant cells and fuel the growth of the cancer. Okay, this is standard it's from one of the articles I read. Okay, now what I want you to understand here is that at UCLA, this was done, and this was way back in 2012 at UCLA. Okay, they took breast cancer stem cells, and they said breast cancer stem cells, the sole source of tumor recurrence, the only source of tumor recurrence, are known to be resistant to radiation therapy and do not respond to chemotherapy. Now, once again, let me say that again. This is published data. Okay, once again, please listen. Breast cancer stem cells, the sole source of tumor recurrence, are known to be resistant to radiation therapy and don't respond to chemotherapy. So then what they did was they studied that, and they wanted to figure out why. So the researchers at UCLA, Department of Radiation Oncology, at the Johnson Comprehensive Cancer Center, report for the first time that radiation treatment, despite killing half of all tumor cells during every treatment, transforms other cells into treatment-resistant breast cancer stem cells. UCLA Department of Radiation Oncology at UCLA's Johnson Comprehensive Cancer Center report that for the first time that radiation, the first time they reported it, it's the first time it's been reported that radiation treatment, despite killing half the tumor cells during every treatment, transforms other cancer cells into treatment-resistant breast cancer stem cells. Quote, they say, we found that these induced breast cancer stem cells were generated by radiation-induced activation of the same cellular pathways used to reprogram normal cells into induced pluripotential stem cells in regenerative medicine, said Dr. Pojunk, who also is a scientist with the Eli and Edith Broad Center of Regenerative Medicine at UCLA. It was remarkable that these breast cancers used the same reprogramming pathways to fight back against the radiation treatment. Okay, now the team also found, this team at UCLA also found that these reprogrammed breast cancer stem cells had a 30-fold increased ability to form tumors compared to the non-irradiated breast cancer cells from which they originated. So, do you want to get radiation? Do you want to get radiation? Are you going to show this to your? You're going to show this to your surgeon? You're going to show this to your medical oncologist? Look for a study, UCLA 2012. I didn't write down the name here, but UCLA Department of Radiation Oncology. Okay, so that's radiation. Okay, there's more. I can't go over everything. So, okay, now let's look at targeting. The American Journal of Cancer Research. Okay, considered a really good journal. Yeah, we make extensive fasting. We make new stem cells. Yes, we make new stem cells. And the difference between cancer stem cells and regular stem cells is that the regular stem cells are not going to become cancer. Okay. Now, in this study that was published in 2015, chemotherapy, they were looking at chemotherapy, right? It was called chemotherapy targeting cancer stem cells. And they found that when they incubated they took pancreatic cancer stem cells and they incubated them with gemcitabine, Gemzar, which is the main chemotherapy you use for pancreatic cancer. They enriched 47.2% compared to 1.47% in a primary cancer cell line. The gemcitabine enriched the cancer stem cells. Now, in vivo, in other words, in a living organism, the experiments showed that the pancreatic cancer stem cells were enriched more than 2 times following 3-week treatment with gemcitabine. What? Wait a minute. What? Wait a minute. What? Yes. It's not a lie. This is their data. What's it called? The American Journal of Cancer Research. So I don't make this up. This is real stuff, man. This is real stuff. So when you have surgery and you got a clean cut, you got whatever it is, you got it out of your colon, you got your ovaries, you got it all out. There's nothing left. Now they want to do this. When you know what it's going to do is make the stem cells that are the only things left stronger and more likely to form tumors. Cancer stem cells are now thought to be responsible for cancer initiation, progression, metastasis, recurrence, and drug resistance. In other words, this is how they start. Cancer, the cells, it starts that way, the initiation of the tumor, the progression of the tumor, the metastasis of the tumor. And one of the things is it has is that they have these WNT and B catechin pathways on them, which are, no need to understand those, but those pathways are necessary for cancer cells to metastasize. Now, one of the things that upregulates this whole WNT thing is high dose chemotherapy. Low dose doesn't. Low dose doesn't. And by the way, and one of the things that increases, this is very interesting. So where are the origin of these cancer stem cells? They want to know what the origin is, and they can't figure it out. But they say that what they are looking at is they say it either comes from chronic inflammation, or it comes from what they call epidermal to mesenchymal transition. In other words, a mature cell gets turned back into a stem cell. Chemotherapy does that. Radiotherapy does that. Once again, chemotherapy does that. Radiation therapy does that. EMT, epidermal to mesenchymal transition. It does it. It does it. It does it. Don't prove it. Look it up. Look it up. You'll find that it does. Fantastic, Karima. So what do I want to show you here? Concluding remarks in this study was that the discovery of cancer stem cells has ushered in a new era of cancer research. Therapeutic strategies against multiple malignancies have severe limitations as it is resistant to chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Once again, therapeutic strategies against multiple malignancies have severe limitations because it is resistant to chemotherapy and radiation. So when you get surgery, you do not ever get anything else. You say to them, thank you very much, did a great job, love it, got your check, got paid, good, I'm out of here. And please don't call me, I'll call you, okay? Now, by the way, someone sent me something very interesting. I'm going to have to look it up, that they were putting in. I've got to have to look it up. That they are those guys that are doing what they're doing, right? Hopefully you all know out there, because if you're watching me, you're probably maybe as crazy as me. Are you almost as crazy as me? Well, if you're almost as crazy as me, then you'll realize what they are doing. But anyway, one of the things they're doing is putting, apparently, nasty things into metformin, which is a shame because metformin also kills cancer stem cells. So does ivermectin. And so does fenformin, which is similar to metformin. But I got to look that up. But and then also, if any of you have ever known anybody with alcoholism and they take this drug called disulfiram, it also kills cancer stem cells. Crazy. So does curcumin. Okay, and then anyway, somebody asked me about Xgeva. Xgeva, should I continue to take it? You don't need to. Xgeva is just blocking. It's a monoclonal antibody that goes against this series of proteins that blocks osteoclastic activity. Also, so does doxorubicin do that. Doxycycline, the antibiotic, which is also got many but doxycycline, what we've been using for over 20 years now for bone metastasis, because it blocks osteoclastic activity just like this Xgeva does, without the side effects. But doxycycline also does a lot of other amazing things. So you take ivermectin while fasting. That's, if you're fasting on water, don't take anything. Just give yourself let your body. Fasting on water is like going to a temple or going to a church, or it's a very holy, special thing. Okay, one of the questions that someone asked me is, how do we know if they've burrowed in, referring to parasites? You'll never know. I mean, unless you have like a big adult tapeworm and you're losing a lot of weight and stuff like that, you're not going to know. But you're going to be, you're just not going to, your health won't be quite the same. Anyway, you have to assume it. And the only one way that I know of that's really good is called the acupuncture meridian assessment test. And it's a way of looking at, using EDS, which is electrodermal screening, which is also called EAV, electric acupuncture, according to Boll. Um, yeah, anyway, so what these things do is they look at your different meridians and they're able to see, and then you can actually test for it. So that's the only way I know of actually finding out whether or not things have burrowed into you. Or you can just assume they have and get rid of them because they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous. You got to remember something. We are we are walking around and being held together and being allowed to live because of microorganisms. They are everywhere, all over us, in every nook and cranny. There's no place where they are not, and there's no place where they are not allowing our physiology to work. They help every aspect of our being, except that there are these little guys in there that we don't need, which are the parasites. So let's get rid of those guys. And then let's restore balance to our gut so that we have a healthy gut. You know what? It's been, whoa, I didn't realize how late it was because we are having so much fun today, but it's time to go. So, swadikap tukon. Swadikap. And aloha and namaste. And I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye. Let me turn this one on. There we go. And then that one, we just do that.
Italy is warning over tsunami disaster. But one question that we Africans are not sitting down to ask ourselves, or at least reason over it, since we are so connected to nature and the universe, is that why is this happening to them and not us? You know, these people are so familiar with all these natural disasters happening over in all these Asian and European countries. Yeah, but here in Africa, the highest we ever get is landslide and flood, and we complain bitterly over it.
Yang and there's no yang and there's no hogo.